Hello, everybody, and welcome to ISTE's Digital Equity PLN call, our webinar, our second one that we're doing this year in the 2017-2018 school year. So today we're going to be talking about digital equity in computer science, and we are so excited to have some amazing panelists with us. So we're going to start it off with some brief introductions before our moderator, Patricia Brown, takes it away. So let's start first with Jason.
Hello, my name is Jason Chong. I'm a teacher on special assignment in Fullerton, California. I get to work with teachers in technology and in lesson plans and tech integration. And in conjunction, I get to also work with computer science special projects across our district. So that's myself.
All right, awesome. Welcome, Jason. Glad to have you here. Next up, we have Tara Linney.
I think she's muted.
Yep. Hi, my name is Tara Linney. I'm an instructional technology coach over at Singapore American School, and I currently support grades 4 and 5 from everything from coding integration to virtual reality to student-led inquiry, and I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. We are excited to have you, so thanks for joining us, Tara. All right, next up we have Wes.
Hi, my name is Wes Kriesel, and I'm glad to be here. And I have the pleasure of working with Jason Chong in Fullerton School District. My position there is Director of Innovation and Instructional Support. And so, yeah, I'm glad to be here.
All right, we are super glad to have you. And just to let you all know, then we have a fourth panelist, Kimberly Lane Clark, who will be joining us in just a moment. So I'm about to kick things over to our amazing moderator. But before I do that, let me just remind you all, if you're watching on our YouTube live page, please chime in the comments on the live chat, and we'll go ahead and we'll answer them here on panel for you if time allows. So I'm going to now kick it over to our amazing moderator, Patricia.
Hello, everyone. I am Patricia Brown. I'm a technology specialist from St. Louis, Missouri, and I am very excited about tonight and having this conversation about computer science and digital equity. So I want to kick it off by asking the first question. I'll start with Jason. How would you define digital equity in computer science?
For me, I kind of take it in two parts. So the digital equity is giving access to all so that they have information and ability to be participants in our world with the access to information and technology. And so in that sense, with computer science, I feel that a digital equity in computer science would look more of a ability to have computer science skills, computational thinking, every kind of aspect that goes beyond the classroom walls, that a student can or a child can develop them at the same with equal access as much as they would do at school learning topics. So how do you get computer science and the skills involved with it to apply to all aspects of time and socioeconomics and all those kind of things. I don't know if that was too vague, but that's how I look at it for now.
No, that was great, and I'm glad you brought up computational thinking. That I'm glad you brought that up. We'll talk about that a little later. What about you, Tara?
So I would very much agree with what Jason's saying, just in giving students what they need. So like in our schools, we've got some students who might be working on computer science related things outside of the school environment, and they might need that level up. And so when we integrate computer science into what we do in the regular school day, that digital equity piece is identifying like where the students are in their journey, whether they need more assistance or whether they need more support. Well, those are kind of the same thing, but whether they need like enrichment or whether they need support within learning computer science. And then also keying into what they're interested in, right? So there may be a whole class on like computer science principles, but like what aspect are they interested in and what's going to allow them to dive deeper to really understand how computers work.
Great. And I love to hear more about how you all are incorporating computer science during the school day, because a lot of times when we talk about inequities, usually it's because kids are left out. So considering the fact that you all are having this during your school day lets me know that you're being very inclusive with your students. So great. What about you, Wes?
All right, let me turn my mic on. That's first. So just to add some things, Jason mentioned access to tech and devices, but then also arranging for those access to the skills involved in computer science. And then Tara mentioned kind of planning for differentiation. I love those two. So from my perspective at the district office, one of the things that we look at is like allocation of resources. So across the district, like how are we funding computer science initiatives? How are we marking them and messaging them? And also staffing. So when you're moving, quickly from the 21st century, like Jason, said, how are you planning for the 22nd century? Like, how are we taking our kids there? And we have to rewrite job descriptions. I mean, like, honestly, we can't pretend that computer science is not an important part. It has to be incorporated into our understanding of how we recruit teachers. So that's one of the ways in staffing and HR and distribution of resources. We have to look at, again, access for all. So all schools and all teachers. So we do things like there's certain, paid professional development opportunities, but then we have things called Thinking Thursdays where anyone can drop in. So kind of opening the gate to see who wants to come, who's interested in it, kind of like Tara mentioned with student interest. We have to kind of build that in for teacher interest too, but then also figure out if teachers aren't interested, we can't sit by and just let that happen. We have to take the initiative for our students. So a couple of thoughts.
And that's great. And that kind of segues us right into my next question. And you kind of answered it, Wes, when the question is, what are some ways you or your district have tackled inequity in computer science? And you kind of shared a little bit about what your district is doing. Would you like to share a little more? And then I'll ask the rest of the panelists.
Sure. One of the things I think we're doing as a district, and this is, again, Jason can speak to this, is around marketing and messaging. The district has taken the initiative to develop pathways at certain schools. And so we actually put dollars into developing, graphics and messaging and banners and signs so that it's clear to parents in the community, like computer science is spoken here. But then you're not only messaging it to the principal and the teachers and the students and the parents, other schools in the district become aware that initiative and those resources are being put forth at various schools. And so then it raises the level of concern, because the schools want, oh, they're getting that, I want that too. And so we definitely want the district all around, all the sites to realize it is absolutely essential that we offer computer science, starting at every grade level all the way up, and that we have a very well articulated, thought out plan of how we're going to, launch our students past our district into, high school and beyond. So that's just a real simple reply. A lot of it has to do with communication, and we have to be aggressive and strategic and let kind of lead the path so that the other schools in the district want to jump on board, So I'll pause there.
Well, I wanted to ask, is there a specific curriculum that you all use to teach computer science? Is there a specific program that you all focus on, or have you developed your own curriculum? What are you all using?
It's a great question. I'm going to pass it over to Jason for that one. He's better prepared for that.
Yeah, so I think when you look at the inequity, it could come in like tiers of how we enter it. So we have the entry level, we have the middle group, and then we have early adopters and people that just are passionate, run forward. And we have those who are very much kind of aware and kind of know what's up. And then there's a group that's like kind of resistant. So with that kind of inequity, what I mean by that is we have certain schools and teachers that just run with it, right? Run with the idea of computer science, and they bring in their passions, and they have every kid have access to ability tied into their content. And then we have some that just are like old school style of like, this is what I need to teach and nothing else, the core standards, and that's it. So the curriculum we use actually is all across the board. We have code.org. We have Khan Academy. We have different basic free OER resources that people can jump in with, as well as apps and different things they find online, or unplugged lessons that CS Unplugged, for example, and just go and find things they integrate. To the level of a partnership that we do where we develop our own curriculum that's tied into the content. The school connects it themselves and own the curriculum themselves because they created it. So I think in terms of entry point with curriculum, I think that's such a broad word, because it's sometimes like, well, here's some open resources and now there's curriculum, now you jump with it, versus some like, I'm ready to go forward and make my own, and want to morph it into it organically what I want it to be. And I think that's kind of where we are. And so just to address that question, when you say inequity in our school district, first we have infrastructure that is built so that it helps have access for everybody. So all our school has free Wi-Fi, more of a mile radius. So kids in that area can come to the school after hours, or the school's open after hours. They can come and do their projects, or deal with computer science related ideas like, if I want to use Python and I go to Pythonista or my app, I need Wi-Fi. They can come to school after hours and they can go and use that. Or a school teacher creates a project, they can still continue that after hours or do it at home. We're a one-to-one district with iPads, so iPad is a little more difficult to do language-based coding, but block coding and things like that is always available and easy for them to use. So then with that being established, the curriculum then that guides our teachers to pursue integration and content connections that are as important as if you did like writer's workshop, and writing and literacy is important. And well, computer science is at that level. We needed to make it that way, because there's a lot of people that argue it's just a sub content area, and some that argue it should be a standalone content area. And there's that argument sometimes where people can't connect it with. So we try to make it so that it's both. Those who want to make it content take time out of their day and make it a specific focused content. And we have some that really take it where they're like, you know what, my math and ELA is more important. So, but I can still bring it in through this way. So we kind of have the gamut of that. I'm not sure if that answers fully, but that's kind of where we address it so far in our district at this point.
Great, that was awesome. Tara, what about you? How is your district tackling inequities in computer science?
So we're a little different, just in the sense of being an international school outside of the U.S. And I would say, like, with our issue with equity in computer science, it's a matter of getting the teachers to be comfortable with computer science and not knowing the complete ins and outs, but seeing where the curricular tie-ins fit. Just like the guys were talking about, the curriculum is like this thing, and it's like, we must do this, we must do this. And some people see it as, this is a curriculum that we have to follow. But the cool thing about computer science is that it gives an option for how to get there. For example, a few years ago when we had in 4th grade, we had a geometry unit. I introduced to the teachers how you can do the frozen activities on code.org site, and the students can easily understand about angles, apply their knowledge to that, and then do really well in their assessments. And we did a nice little action research study on that. And the students got it. Like, they were able to make those clicks in the curriculum once being exposed to those tools. In 5th grade, it's very similar in geometry, where students are graphing shapes in different quadrants, and on the Scratch program, they're using an XY grid. So it's like they're getting that coding experience, and it's in the curriculum, and it's not this siloed activity where teachers don't see it as something that's possible because it's like one more thing that you add on, right? It becomes the how instead of the what.
That's great. Would love to hear more about that geometry lesson with the 5th graders. That's pretty cool. So we have a question from our live viewing audience. Elford Rawls-Deal would like to know, are any of our panelists using Project Lead the Way? And he also said that resources are often the challenge and not the actual curricular. So anybody have any ideas or using Project Lead the Way in their districts?
So it doesn't work in my country. Yeah.
I mean, same for us. We have schools that use Project Lead the Way, and I guess what Alfred was mentioning, it definitely is a curriculum, and it's very rigid and sometimes scripted. And so what we found bigger success is when our teachers that took it more organically, and the resources actually come from a Google search sometimes, or tapping into their passion when it comes to something that they connect to. So if it's like, you know, I'm really an artist, I love art, or I love music, or something like that. And then when they use that as the theme and use computer science as the and theme and as the main point, I guess, and then the CS becomes the tool to assist in allowing that to happen, then I don't think, so I'm not sure what it means by resources. Like, are you saying resources as in, do I need more help with Scratch, or more help with learning Python? If that's the case, there's like galore of free sources that teach you those things. So if that's the resource we're looking for, then that's there. But in terms of resources as connected to a curriculum or a content, I think it's really more teacher driven and teacher organically created and really found online and things like that. I don't know if that answered that question. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and you know, YouTube is always a great resource for anything you want to know. We had another question. Joe would like to know if you all can point to some good examples of curriculum that infuses computer science and not just provide computer science instruction separate from everything else. So I guess something that has a more of an integrated approach. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll just go first here. I think my gut is it's often more of a teacher creativity point where they make the connection. Because, you know, specific classrooms and local curriculum and even school district, you know, scope and sequence or pacing guides, they don't match across the board. So, so it's usually how the teacher can connect it. But I've been around Jason Chong, and like he can take any subject matter, any content, and figure out a half a dozen ways to tie it to computer science. So that's kind of my inclination on that question is, but that's a very unsatisfying, you know, answer. You know, I wish there were like, oh, if you have this program or this guide, then you can connect it to the curriculum. But that's my thought.
Looks like we got Kim Lane. Hey, Kim.
Hey, everyone. How are y'all?
I'm great. I'll just give you a second to introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Lane Clark. I'm a blended learning specialist in the Dallas area. I'm also the ISTE CSN PLN president. So I'm happy to be here. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
That's okay. We're glad that you are here. Just kind of wanted to get your take on how you define digital equity. We've heard from our other panelists, but I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about how you define digital equity, and also what are some ways your district has tackled some the inequities that you see in computer science.
So with digital equity, it's so broad to me. I think that with digital equity in our district, I mean, everyone has a device. Everyone has the access to basically access anything they need to. But just as a whole, I think sometimes in districts there is a lack of, depending on if it's an affluent school or a low poverty school within a district, there's also a lack of digital equity within those walls. So I really think it's important to kind of tackle that and make sure that everybody has access to whatever they need.
Awesome. So Karen North has a comment and a question. She met with the district STEM coordinator who said no one wants to champion computer science because they don't know how to make it fit in their classroom. I think this is an ongoing thing that we hear time and time again. So panelists, how can we solve this problem? Or maybe how have you solved the problem? And maybe there isn't a solution. I don't know. But what are your thoughts? Let's start with Tara.
Okay. So I think that there's a lot of professional learning to be had when you're connected. The this is like the number one problem that comes up time and time again. Like, how do you fit it into the classroom? How do you fit it into the curriculum? And if you're on Twitter, there's always a chat, it feels like, especially in December. Around, like, it'll be, I forget what the hashtag is, like CS Ed Week is what it was back in December. But there's like every month, I would say at least one chat. And it's just a matter of figuring out like who's doing the chat. And it's teachers that are providing resources in terms of how they are integrating computer science into the curriculum, because it's not always like you have to sit by yourself and figure it out, but it's turning on that part of your brain to say like, this is what I know about computer science. This is what I know about my content. Here's the way the two can match. In our younger grades, we've got a coach who's working with teachers to integrate directionality, like on a map, north, south, east, west, and number sense, and with coding BBots, right? So like the kids are actually pressing the buttons and they're understanding that part. And yes, that's very basic, but it's a way that they are able to meet their standards and their power standards in the curriculum without doing computer science as its own siloed activity. So it's being creative and finding those new ways to learn information.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I wanted to readdress a little bit too on Joe, because I came up with an idea, or something came to my mind. Somebody quoted at a place I heard a speaker say, without resources leads to frustration, and without structure leads to anxiety. And I think that's kind of what happens when it comes to teachers with computer science, because it's a very technical field. I mean, it's very daunting when you hear computer science. People like, ooh, coding, ooh, like technical experiences. And I mean, I'm not even an engineer. I'm not a coder. And how am I going to teach that if I'm not a master of it? So what I wanted to address with Joe was that, even with resources, I think the teacher is the best resource. And yet we always look for a resource. So I like what you said. It's not about the curriculum. Okay, that's great. The curriculum comes in many forms, manuals, whatever. But when it comes to resources, it's always looking for something to support me. And so I think what it comes down to is that sometimes we don't feel confident in ourselves saying we're the best resource that we have. Or we're very resourceful people. Every teacher I work with, I tell them, you're the best resource I could even go to, because I see the creativity that you come up with. So when it comes to what Karen was saying, no one needs to champion it, because then it almost feels like it's this like daunting task that somebody needs to take the torch or else no one else can follow. I think every teacher can do it. And every teacher I share, I was like, dude, you have great ideas. So like right here, this place, we just replace it with something that they already use. Like when we're a one-to-one district, you're already using some sort of computer. You're already using some sort of tool. Instead of this, we bring in like a pet, you bring in a robot. Like instead of this, you bring in the coding aspect. Instead of a storytelling, you put in animation. There's so many things that they want to do. The resources then come in any Google search we do. Like I keep going back to, or YouTube clips like Patricia, you mentioned, like this is the world of the DIY, and this is the world of self-informed information. We don't need a teacher to be up in the front saying, here's how you do an animation, follow me. Here's how you do this code, follow me. Then it becomes just a rote memorized activity versus an organic application of guiding and facilitation. I have a great idea. I'm going to empower you, student, with you being able to create something. And I think that's a thing that I think, Karen, I hope this answers your question, but the STEM coordinator doesn't have to answer that by saying you should go champion or somebody else is the champion. It's basically you are already a champion with what you do in your teaching. We're just going to infuse the computer science. If you take away that word computer science, let's throw in a computational thinking or critical thinking or problem solving ways to make something happen. Then I think you've already addressed CS. I think all teachers actually do CS in one form or another when it comes to how they do discipline, how they do management, how they do routines, how they do their structure, lesson plans. It's all like actually principles of computer science there already. They just don't sometimes realize that, oh, really, that's all it is? And I think just bringing that to light, I hope that helps you, Karen, that you should keep going and highlight those areas. And then there's resources galore. Anyways, sorry, I talked too long.
No, that was great. You made very good points, especially the fact that, we use computer science every day and people think that it's just supposed to be something for nerds or the real geeky people. And really and truthfully, we all have a little bit in. I've learned to embrace my nerdiness, but that's okay. That's a whole different story. But in a general sense, I think it's about taking risks and allowing yourself to be open to learning something different. And even if you're not the expert, which we're not, in most cases, allow your students to also be a part of facilitating that learning. So I think that's where we have to step back and kind of allow kids to embrace that learning as well. Kim, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think he answered it really well. I like the champions part of it, so I think that's really good.
Okay. So moving on to our next question, we have a lot of educators that are probably brand new to computer science, don't even know where to get started. What resources would you say would be helpful for teachers who are brand new, don't really know what to do, but are curious or excited or interested in doing some computer science with their students? Where would you point them? What would be the first thing that you would say would be most beneficial? And whoever wants to jump in can answer that.
I'll say code.org is a really great place. If you go to studio.code.org, there's a lot of like easy to use guides that students can easily like they can go through, and it's like 20 lessons per course, right? And then you can set up accounts. It's super easy, or you can just like have the students go and explore. It's a nice, easy entry in. And what's also cool with the resources on code.org is that in the bottom left-hand corner, if you wanted to add another skill onto it, like learning foreign languages, in the bottom left-hand corner, you can change the language, right? So if you're like a language teacher and you teach French, you can change the language of the blocks to French so that students are learning the language and what the words mean, and they're getting that computational thinking aspect.
I would agree with Tara. I would say csunplug.org, code.org, Khan Academy, I think would be great entry levels for anybody that wants to just give an activity, and there's already a lot of activities on there. And it gives also free exploration for students. They don't need to wait for the teacher, actually. Once you get them going, they run it themselves. They keep going and diving further if they like. And it gives you a springboard for a teacher to say, okay, well, I wanted to do an animation. Well, there's animation activities right here. Well, I wanted to make a game. Oh, here's some game activities. So they can explore beyond the classroom walls even. And another unique, different way is that there are so many CS-related companies and parents and business people out there that are chomping at the bit to partner. So we have a lot of partnerships. I'm very firm believer in partnerships, more so now, especially in computer science, because if you can't be the expert, you can bring in experts, or you can bring in expert partnerships. And the biggest success we've had in getting teachers to enter is not to find the traditional way of let's go online and find resources only to. It's these partners help springboard your ideas. So I wanted an idea for a robot competition. I found a partner. They helped me. They said, I'll give you this much time, this many days. I'll go to these schools. And boom, we make it happen. I don't need to be the master of it. And we just kind of take those partnerships and work. So for any entry-level teacher, also another thing to not be afraid of is to make some cold calls. And it's kind of weird as a teacher, like I feel like I'm a business person more ever than now, but I've made so many cold calls to like just parents and companies and people saying, I want to bring in this like thing. Are you able to help out in any way? And boom, they're there. There's CS for All, there's Google CS First. There's so many of those resources, but the partnership in your local area and the resource you have in your own community, you'll be very surprised. There are so many people somewhat involved in some sort of computer science that can come in and actually be a live expert to help you with that. And I think that's a very good starting point as well, to see the kids saying, well, it's beyond the walls, other people coming and giving me support than just finding a website or something else that also is my portal as a live person that's able to come and do that. And I know it's not for everyone, it's not everywhere, but I mean, that's been very powerful what we do.
And I can attest to what you said of just reaching out to companies or organizations and just asking them for support and help. I've done that so many times, even just going out to social media and say, hey, I'm interested in utilizing this resource. Would you give it to me for free? And a lot of times they do. One particular organization, Spark Fund, I'm doing a STEM is for Girls group. We're doing after school program specifically targeting underrepresented groups. And I just reached out to them, asked them, could they send me some microbit kits? And they said, sure. And they sent me some, and my girls are using them. So don't be afraid, like Jason said, to ask organizations, companies, specific people for support and help, because they will give you that. And one thing I wanted to ask you, Jason, you mentioned earlier about unplugged lessons or unplugged. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of unplugged and versus the plugged in, and why teachers want to have a focus there as well?
I think the unplugged is very low risk, low anxiety, because it doesn't require me to have the latest, greatest robot or crazy kind of software to make this happen. It's really the principles and ideas. So in K2, for example, we definitely use that because it's building and playing almost. It's something that unplugged because you don't need to be tied into a computer, but it's showing what the computer actually does and mimicking what the student would be acting like the robot or acting like the computer. And so these activities allow the brain to see physically, kind of like beyond the screen, how it works, so that when they do see it on a screen, it makes that connection. It's like, oh, like just like when I did this or did that, this is what the computer is doing. And they can build on those building blocks to have a building block even, you know, prior knowledge. I think the unplugged builds that capacity. So I would actually also say, though, that is then you have to also make that connection to go beyond, because you just do unplug, you're thinking, oh, I did my CS time, I met my quota, I did my job for that. It really only is like saying, I taught you how to do ABCs, which is good, great already, but you got to give that next connector, because I think a big aspect of computer science is failure and grit. And if you iterations, right? If you don't fail, you don't know how to keep trying in different things. And in the failure, you see, here's my new thing. So a lot of my teachers, even myself, sometimes we always get caught up in the, I'll set my bar at level 5. And if they get to level 4, awesome. Or they get to 5, they got to 5. I'm all about set the bar to 10 or 100. And then you get to 90. Then you know what? You went way further than the 5. But I think we all know that as a philosophy, but in application, we get scared, especially in our craft, because it's such high stakes testing and all these things that come into play. Oh, if I take away for this time for math, then I'm losing for computer science. I think that's actually a very essential piece to add into the unplugged. Like unplugged is also to teach failure, to teach mistakes, to teach reiterations. And that needs to be a center point of that. I think that's a real big point.
And I'd like to add on to what Jason's saying. Those are all super important things to teach. And the easiest way to teach like failure and iteration is to model it. And I think oftentimes as educators, we get into this whole like practice makes perfect. Well, not even like we come out and we're like, no, we know all the answers, right? And the moment that we don't, what happens? Well, when the students see that, they model that, especially young students, because they don't see what it looks like to get frustrated. They don't see what it looks like to not know the right answer. They don't see what it looks like to fail. So if we're not modeling that for them starting at a young age, then they're not going to easily develop that iteration mindset. Because we can tell them repeatedly, like, try again, you'll get it, you'll get it. But if they see us give up on something because something doesn't work, or the projector's not working, or we don't understand something, so we walk away from it forever, they're going to model that, especially girls. So if we've got girls in our class, which we do unless we're an all boys school, and then if you're like a female teacher in particular, and you know it's math or science or coding or anything like that, and you don't know the answer, put the question back on the students and like be okay with not knowing things right away, because as soon as they see you do that, and as soon as they see you stick with a problem and see it through, that they, especially the girls in that class, are going to start to do the same things themselves. And I think that's one thing that we have to remember, is that yes, it's important to teach, but it's more important to model what that looks like.
Very good point, Tara. That is very important to model. Exactly. All right. So I have a question. I think Wes would be a good person to answer this question. How did you solve, this is a follow-up from Karen's earlier question. How did you solve the problem of finding champion creative teachers like Jason and then give them time to scale their expertise? Computer science is not a priority with limited time. So how did you tackle that?
That's an interesting question. I think there's quite a few ways to go about that. There was a shift in, I'm fairly new to the district, but there was a shift where we created an innovation department and sort of moved from kind of an IT-based approach to having instruction lead the use of technology And so that shift at the district office allowed us to kind of create positions where we could bring teachers out of the classroom. So Jason's in one of those positions, but then, I mean, it wasn't just that. It was once Jason was in that position, and Jason can speak to this more. But what I saw is district leadership gave permission for him to follow his passions. And so as computer science was one of his passions, he was allowed to develop projects that that involved computer science. So in that way, the district is modeling what we would want our teachers to do with our students. And you would want teachers to be interested. And I think Tara spoke to this earlier about what the students' actual interests are. So it's very difficult if the district leadership is not paying attention to the adult learners in the organization. If we're not tuned into what makes them tick, what really sets them on fire, what's going to make them, you know, I mean, I don't want to, you know, just attach it to how many hours you work, but I'd rather have somebody who's just like so passionate about what they're doing, they'll work all weekend, versus somebody who's like, hey, at 3, I'm out because this job is not really making me happy. So district leadership, finding those ways to really like ignite Jason's flame, and then Jason sets other people on fire, and then he gets to spread his love and passion and to other teachers. So that's one way, and that's sort of a little bit of a long answer, and it's also a little bit resource heavy, you know, because that's creating like, you know, you're funding, you know, FTEs outside the classroom. So but that is one way. I think they really, at least Fullerton has leveraged the passion of its teachers to do amazing. I mean, we haven't even touched on like Robot Nation and some of the things that are going on in Fullerton. But so leveraging passion, that's one. The other thing is, and I'll just go back to Tara mentioned using Twitter. So helping teachers understand that there's a community out there. Maybe your building, maybe your grade level is not the safe environment for learning that you need, but there are people out there who will answer every question and take so much time because that's their passion. So kind of lowering that bar and lowering the access to other people through Twitter, for example. So that's one. And then I'll stop there. I like that question. Thank you.
I actually could add on to what Wes is saying, because in my role, I also work with a lot of teachers. And one thing, this is not a question, I think Karen, that's a great question. It's not about finding champions in CS. It's not a content-specific problem. You have those teachers, you know, that are like, give me something new. Give me something new. Like, I want to try something different today. There's those front leader innovators that just at every site, they all take on anything. They want something every time. Every year, I want to do something different. And those were the ones I always found that when I said, okay, you want to do a robotics program? You want to do this with the EV3? You want to try something with Alexa? They're the first ones jumping on saying, dude, what is that? Like, you know, they just get excited, and they're in curious minds already. I think it's not an issue of champions for CS. It's a curious and innovative desire and passionate people, teachers, educators that want to expose kids something to new, expose their students to something new. But those are true champions in every content area. So I think a champion in CS would be a champion in ELA, a champion for math. Those would all fit perfectly to be champions of CS as well. It's just that they haven't seen opportunities of what could be done with some things like, you know what, we're going to do have our kids code their own Alexa and make their own skill sets. Well, what is that? I had no idea you could do that. Well, you know what, in ELA, if you had this project, let's do this instead. And here's some resources, or let's bring you a partner. And once you give them little gateways, they just run with it on their own. We had a teacher who like even Scratch, second grade, what is Scratch? I wanted them to put their own game. Boom, they just said, here's some resources, let's try, let's take a look at it together. And they are the champions now. I would call them the champions. So I think it's interesting, like sometimes it's easy to say, well, you know, how do you find people that are passionate about CS? I think sometimes they just don't know about it, but they're passionate. And that would be transferable to any other content area. That's how I see that when I notice in our district and our teachers, because there's so many fabulous champions of a lot of content areas. They would be, I always like, oh, you'd be great for CS. And they're like, no way. And then when they give it a little shot, like they actually become that. Like it's really interesting.
Yeah, that is Really good. Tara, did you want to add? Go ahead. Jump in.
Yeah, a quick add. So sometimes it's like they become passionate because of what they see going on in the school. And then sometimes it's an outside influence. So like I remember a few years ago when Tim Cook did his big like Apple keynote on like Swift playgrounds and coding is like the new future. All of a sudden, one of my 27 teachers emails me and was like, I want my kids to do coding. And she is somebody who every single time that I said this integrates in this way would like just be like, no, we don't have time for it. But then as soon as Tim Cook said, hey, this is what's going to get your kids employed in the future, she's all over it. So I think it's that exposure within the school community and then outside of it. But then also like showing teachers like, here's what their future looks like. Here's what the future of our students looks like, based on like who these top CEOs are of all these tech companies and someone that maybe they look up to for that futuristic appeal.
Definitely good point. Thanks for adding that, because I think we have to really consider that career path. And a lot of times we're setting our kids up to go to four-year institutions, and a lot of our kids aren't. And so we can figure out ways that they can get into computer science fairly quickly and then move on, you know, to higher education if they see fit. But I think that's great. We had some great comments that came through. It looks like we answered Karen's question. She was very happy for that answer. And she also added that she believes it starts with district leadership, as Wes pointed out, and then an asset map to find out who is passionate about computer science. So definitely.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
I love that term asset map. And I think that's something we're striving to do. We're starting to do is we give our students a kind of an interest, strengths, passion survey through Thrively. It's a software. But I think what we really need to do is take a look at all the learners in the organization and really get to know our adult learners and their strengths and their passions. And so the word she said asset map, I was like, I love that term, because if I'm passionate about something, but I don't have the skill, but if I knew across the district, there's somebody in my very own city, in my very own school district, who's passionate about the same thing, who would be a learning partner for me, how amazing that would be. But sometimes, you know, they're in the email director, but we just don't know who they are. So I love that.
That's a great idea. I love that, being able to build on everyone's passions and have some kind of database or something so people can see who does what and what they're expert in. And like you said, partner up across the district. I think that's really cool. So we have a question from Michael. He would like to know, do any of you utilize the PyTop platform? He said he just met with them at TCEA, and he thought their product was pretty powerful for teaching computer science. Anybody have any experience with PyTop?
Not yet. I've experienced it at conferences, and it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to introducing when I move to Paris, but we don't have it yet.
I've also heard about it. It's very definitely, there's a lot of products out there like that, PyTop, Kano, a lot of great things that teach language-based coding or block coding. And so to answer Michael's question, I think it depends on your device and what you guys use at your school. Like if it's a one-to-one iPad, you might need something that's affordable to teach language-based coding. So it could be an app like Pythonista that could do the same thing that PyTop might do, but PyTop might offer a better interface. But it's also costs. You have to pay like $200-300 for that machine, which is like the same price as buying a laptop or a Chromebook. And so what could you really do? So I think this rabbit hole of computer science tools is kind of crazy. Like every conference I go to and every exhibit hall, there's so many new, latest, greatest. We go to CES the last 2 years, and CES is like the newest invention. And you look out there, it's never ending. So it really comes down to what really triggers tugs at the heartstrings of your kids, as well as what you kind of be adaptable or comfortable with. So, but yeah, PyTop, great product. Kano, great product. Do very similar things. So if you have money for it and you guys are into it and want teachers that want it, I say go for it.
I knew you knew what it was, Jason. I knew. I had no idea what PyTop is. I haven't used that platform. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And I've used it as well. I've seen some teachers actually use it in a workshop. But also when they're purchasing these items, I just want to make sure that they understand the fundamentals of computer science as well. It's so cool to have all of these different tools and gadgets to use, but the whole purpose is for them to understand the fundamentals. So whenever he integrates the PyTop, just make sure that the teachers and the students gather that wealth of knowledge of what computer science is and what coding is, because they're two different things as well. But just making sure they understand those particular things first and just add those pieces into it as well.
Good point. Thank you, Kim. That was a really good point. Because sometimes we get all wrapped up in the bells and whistles and forget what is the important purpose. Yeah. So I'm really interested in hearing about some of the amazing computer science projects and things that you all have going on in your schools. Can you share maybe one or two things that kind of just excite you, that you felt that really met the needs of your students or your teachers, if you work with teachers, and just share something that kind of jumps out at you as like one of your maybe favorite things that you've done?
I'll kind of,
go ahead.
We have a K through 12 STEM district. And so in our district, basically, we have a innovative learning lab where our students are learning computer science, the fundamentals piece of it in elementary school. Then they take on middle school, where they're learning kind of the principles of just discovering every part of a computer, how a computer works, the networking piece of it, also coding. And then when they get to high school, they're taking AP in computer science. But we have a pipeline that we're designing that's basically within computer science. And so the students are doing PBLs. Of course, that's what kind of our district is made up in as well. But they're also just taking on all types of classes throughout elementary, middle school, high school. They're seeing some form of computer science in each one of those. We also have one of my teammates, we created our Raspberry Pi girls group. And so we had a college come out and just help our students learn how to work with the Raspberry Pis. And so they've been kind of taking that on. And so this is, and that's middle school students. We just want them to see everything in every single aspects of their life about whatever computer science is. So that's kind of one big project that I actually absolutely love of what we're doing. And we have some champion teachers in every grade level.
That's awesome. I love that you all are creating a pipeline up to high school. What about you, Tara? What's going on in your district? Or what is something that you've done that I love the geometry project you were talking about with the graphing, but tell us more about some of the cool things that you're doing with your students or your teachers.
So there's a variety of things for the equity piece, and it's not so much about digital equity as it is about gender equity. Since I've started at this school, we've had began a girls coding club. It actually started as boys and girls, but I had 24 boys and 1 girl during the first term, and was like, no. So then we transformed into a girls coding club, and it has been so successful. Like the girls, I mean, they're jumping into everything from JavaScript and Python, even as young as 3rd grade. And while they're just dabbling, like they can explain what happened in their code when they changed it, which is really cool. And another really fun, exciting project, which also focuses on girls, is something called Technovation Challenge. So Technovation Challenge is really, really great. Has anybody heard of it? Okay, so Technovation Challenge has been up and running for about 8 years, I believe. And it's this nonprofit. It's partnered with the Sustainable Development Goals. It's partnered with the UN. It's partnered with like a whole bunch of companies. Google is one of them. And so what happens is girls form teams of anywhere from 1 to 5 team members, and they develop an app that solves a world problem that exists within their communities. And what's really exciting, so this year is going to be our school's first year in participating in this. And I did a call out for girls throughout 5th grade up to 12th grade, because you have to be at least 10 years old to compete. And it's all free. And they have this curriculum, and it's great. But I've got one team of 5th graders, one middle school team, and then one team of 2 high school girls who are each doing different projects. And it's a really great opportunity for girls to create something that matters and learn how to code at the same time.
Very, very cool. And I love the fact that you are very intentional in targeting girls. And that's the one thing that you have to do in order to ensure that you have equity, is you be very intentional. Like for me, when I was working on getting my student girls group, I was very intentional in who I invited, and I wanted underrepresented groups, and I sent invitations specifically to those students because I wanted them to know that I wanted them a part of this. So that's what equity is all about. Sometimes you gotta push kids and say, I want you a part of it, because sometimes they don't see themselves and think that they should be a part of it. Anybody else who wants to jump in next and tell us about something that you're doing that's awesome in your district?
So for us, it's been a whirlwind. I mean, last 2 years, just it seems like we keep adding new things on, and the backbone of everything is always about experiences and passion, because they have to do, right? The students have to do something. They have to be involved. They have to be connected. A lot of times it's hard to do in a classroom, but so Robot Nation, I think Wes mentioned earlier, was nothing more than a competition, robotics competition. However, it was actually a Trojan horse to allow the teachers to get exposure, number one. And then that's to build our own PLN of our I like to call it our fraternity and sorority of educators that know that there are other ones like you in our district. So that leads to our pathways. So I think Michael might have mentioned in a comment, but we're a K-8 district, but we have pathway schools. We try to cover all types. So we have a K-6 that's low socioeconomic, Title I. We have a junior high that's Title I, low socioeconomic. And then we have a school that's K-8, middle school, that's on the higher end of socioeconomics. But the goal is, like you said, put it into the classrooms, that's integrated content that happens in the day, not a club. That way, you know for sure everyone gets it, no matter what it is. And then the teachers, it's been hard, and I mean I give them all the kudos, because they've been trying to make it work. They try to take that and organically infuse it into their own lessons. We have a jogathon that the kids do. So you know what, let's do a robotic jogathon and make that into a math lesson where they do ratios and proportions and measurement. All right, that's a success. Oh, I do biomes. So let's adapt adaptation. So let's take a robot and adapt it to become adaptable to these biomes and learn the science standards. It's awesome. So the pathway schools were the way we wanted to make it systematized, but all the things we do this year and on has been, like Tara's mentioning, Technovation Challenge, or Invention Convention, or Entrepreneurship Expo, or App Challenge, or NatCar. Anything that we do has to come down to experiences that the kid connects to, because I think Kim mentioned, it's not about computer science is broad. It's not just only coding. And I think that's where people sometimes get caught up. Computer science means I have to learn how to teach kids to code. That's very important. It's a backbone. It's a fundamental issue. But computer science is a very broad word. I mean, in our pathway school, we target for sure 3rd grade. You're doing one level. That emphasis is robotics. That's a type of computer science. 4th grade, you're going to focus on inventions and circuitry. 5th grade, you have the theme of artificial intelligence. 6th grade, your theme this year is cybersecurity. Junior high, your electives, we have actually junior high kids, 6th, 7th, 8th graders that take a test and have passed because they have the ability to. But you got to take the ceiling off, that lid off, though, and say, you know what, it's not me that restricts you. We're going to offer you those experiences. So we have kids that are doing that. And I love the APCS principles test. I think that's going to be our foundation for all kids to have access to computer science equitably, not just about coding. Because I think every teacher that gets stuck is they're like, well, I don't know how to code, so they can't do this, or I can't do this. You know what? Computer science is, like Kim said, it's a principle. This has networks. It's the ideas how it works. There's so many ways to entry point it. So make your lessons even just experiences of computer science. And so that's been really exciting and been powerful in our pathways. And I think our experiences that I've been able to kind of start and create with our teammates is the Trojan horse to get teachers excited and actually create in their own classrooms. So that's been a kind of our 2-year mission. It's been like all here and there and everywhere, but some cool, amazing things happen, and just very proud. And giving recognition to all the teachers always is the best thing. Like, it's about humility here, where you got to keep passing the love and saying you guys can do it, and you keep going, and you're empowered, and you know you guys don't hold the keys anymore. The kids have it. And when you see that happen, it's like, that's been really awesome, a movement that we've had. It's like a perfect storm. When one domino falls, all these dominoes keep falling, people to keep coming, and tech innovation. Another one I'm going to definitely say next year we're getting involved. Our girls are going to that too, you know. So just finding new things, saying, you know what, let's do it. And another teacher says, I'll do that. It's been great. That's been exciting for our district right now.
Oh my goodness, I just need to jump in, Jason. I just need to give you like a virtual high five. Oh my goodness, like this is awesome. It's like amazing. Like what you're saying about like robotics and cybersecurity, that's like everything in computer science. It's not just about coding, like making a Flappy Bird move. Like that's not what it's about. Like, oh my goodness, just so many different things, and our generation needs to know that, because they're the ones that are creating everything and need to be the next inventor of something. So they need to know how it works. So you're absolutely right. And cybersecurity is huge nowadays. So our citizens need to know about that. So like virtual high five to that. Like that's pretty cool.
I'm virtual and high fiving too. I got really excited listening to you talk about the different things with your students. And I love the fact that a lot of times students can drive this learning. Like they can come up with what they want to learn. They can have their passion projects. So that is awesome. We are getting close to the end of our time, but I wanted to give everybody a chance to give some final words or final thoughts, like 1 minute each. Real quickly. Start with you, Wes.
Okay, all right, go. Set the timer. So I just had some notes that I was writing. As we were talking, I was realizing like part of our mindset is it's like no holds barred. It's anything it takes. It's like, I mean, we're trying to advance computer science through clubs, through challenges, through competitions, through pathways, through marketing, through messaging, through branding. It's like any way we can, we're trying to take that approach. And so one of the things that I didn't hear talked about, but I just wanted to share, is we've had the Robot Nation competition the last couple of years. And so a layer that we're trying to add this year is we're having students learn live streaming technology so that they can go to the event and live stream and commentate and broadcast and report on it. And that broadens our computer science thrust in a couple ways. One, you have students who are into live streaming who can actually help us communicate the message of what we're doing. And they may be marginally interested or just in a supportive role with the computer science, but they can be a pivotal role in communicating the message. And two, then you have kids who understand computer science and maybe they're not the competitive type, but they love to talk about it and they love to share insights, and they're into the commentating. And that's like, you know, humanities and language arts and like all these other things. So we're really excited. Kind of a pet project of mine is to get at Robot Nation to have 6th graders, you know, doing this live streaming broadcast. So the community, parents, grandparents, everybody who can't make that competition can have access to it. And then that's also part of digital equity, because it's not just the kids who got to drive down to the competition site, but then it's anyone who could see that live stream could go, that's, and somebody said this earlier, I can see it. It's right here in my district. How do I get there? How do I access it? Peace out. I'm done. Okay.
Great points. Tara, please share and also talk to us about your book that you have coming out.
Yes. So I guess since there's only a minute, I'll go ahead and do the book plug. So I have written a book called Code Equity, Keying Girls into Coding, because it's something that I'm super passionate about. And while there are a lot of materials out there for just teaching coding in general, I found that there's not really like a guide for how to bridge that gap. And that gender gap is super huge in the technology field, just in terms of professions, in terms of pay, in terms of access, and it's huge, right? So the idea is that if we're going to begin to bridge that in the corporate world, then we start in education. So the book is called Code Equity, Keying Girls into Coding. I'm at the final edit of it now, and so it should be available for pre-order. I guess I need to figure out how all this works because I'm self-publishing, but by early March.
That is amazing. I'm definitely going to be looking for that book. Please let us know. We're going to virtually high-five you for that too as well. Well, I think we are out of time. But I wanted to thank all of our panelists for being here tonight. It was a great conversation. It went so fast because we were just having such a great conversation. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you to our audience for the great questions, and continue to talk about digital equity, continue to talk about computer science so that we can truly have computer science for all. Thank you.